Paris Saint-Germain. A club with so much money, it's as if manager Christophe Galtier is playing a real-life game of Football Manager. But that blessing is also a curse. People, and more importantly, their fans, expect. Since PSG were taken over by their Qatari owners in 2011, successive managers have so far failed to deliver the holy grail of the Champions League. So, how do we solve a problem like PSG? First up, we're talking manager turnover. Since the Qataris came to town, PSG have had 7 managers. That's 7 managers in 12 seasons. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that this constant upheaval in the dugout is no good for a team who are expected to seriously challenge in Europe's top competition. When Qatar Sports Investments, QSI, finalised their deal for PSG in 2011, the slightly unfashionable Antoine Kombouaré was manager of the Parisian outfit. Kombouaré's face simply didn't fit as the Qataris wanted a big name for their big project. So, in December 2011, he was given his marching orders with the club top of League One. In a hilarious twist of irony, PSG ended the 2011-2012 season finishing second to Montpellier. In came serial winner Carlo Ancelotti, who won the league and cup double in his first full season in charge before promptly leaving for Real Madrid. It was reported that he enjoyed a less than friendly relationship with Leonardo, which is hardly surprising given the temperament of the latter. Next in was Laurent Blanc, who won 3 league and cup doubles in a row, but was still relieved from his position at the end of the 2015-2016 campaign, despite winning 11 trophies. Unai Emery replaced the Frenchman, himself bringing in 7 trophies over a 2-year spell, before he too was replaced by Thomas Tuchel. When Tuchel surprisingly left in 2020, Mauricio Pochettino was next in the PSG hot seat. He would only last 18 months before QSI once again rung the changes by bringing in Christophe Galtier. All these men have one overarching commonality: their failure to win a Champions League. What QSI apparently failed to realise is that by constantly changing the man in charge, they have very little chance of actually realising their Champions League dreams. Next, we're talking Mercenaries. The first major signing under the QSI regime was the Argentinian playmaker Javier Pastore, who was brought in shortly after the Qatari rocked up in 2011. At the time, the fee of €42 million raised eyebrows around Europe, but it did little to deter QSI and their transfer policy. The money simply kept on flowing out the club, and in came a whole host of world-class players, a lot of whom were in their prime. So, what's the problem with that, I hear you cry? Well, France isn't and never has been the best league in the world, so questions are always going to be asked about players who choose to go there during the peak years of their careers. Yes, they've made some shrewd signings like David Beckham, Gianluigi Buffon, and Sergio Ramos down the years, but these guys were all coming towards the end of their playing days, and not many would have begrudged them one last big payday. There have been a whole host of top players who've gone there in their pomp, however, with questions being raised about their true motivations. Players such as Angel Di Maria, Edison Cavani, Thiago Silva, and even the legendary Lionel Messi have all walked through the doors at the Parc des Princes, when there were offers on the table from other European clubs, suggesting they were lured to Paris thanks to the massive wage packets on offer. I mean, take Neymar for example. Since his 2017 transfer at the age of 25, he's played 48% of PSG's league games. 48%. That is a shocking statistic. Not to mention the fact that he is conveniently injured or suspended each year when his sister's birthday rolls around, allowing him to head back to his native Brazil to celebrate. Having these sort of players breeds an ethos which isn't conducive to winning the Champions League. Which brings us on to our next point, the lack of teamwork. You try telling the greatest footballer who ever played the game that he needs the track back and see how that works out for you. PSG's lack of teamwork can arguably be traced all the way back to 2017. When they travelled to Barcelona to play out a routine second leg in a commanding position, having won the first leg 4-0. What transpired was anything but routine, and one of the least professional performances ever witnessed in a Champions League fixture. PSG had coasted the first leg and were heavy favourites to qualify, but simply fell apart due to a lack of leadership, and more importantly, lack of any sort of meaningful teamwork. I mean, how does a team lose a 4-0 lead? What made that horrific performance even worse was the fact that they went into stoppage time with a 2-goal cushion. As you can imagine, accusations were rife after the game of players downing tools and only thinking about themselves, which was difficult to disagree with. And not much has changed on that front since, to be honest. PSG regularly falter at the business end of Champions League campaigns, and over the course of the last 7 seasons, They've gone out in the last 16 on no fewer than 5 occasions. For a team who has spent so much money, this simply isn't good enough. But until they learn to work together, this will just keep happening. Next up, do the fans expect too much? It's difficult for fans of the country's most dominant club not to have an inflated sense of importance or expectation. PSG have won their domestic league 8 out of the 11 seasons since QSI took over. So there is a certain level of assumption around the French capital that this is just a matter of time before Neymar, Messi and Mbappe deliver their most coveted trophy, the Champions League. In some ways, this is slightly unrealistic. Yes, they have 3 of the most fearsome forwards in the world all plying their trade at the club, but that doesn't get away from the fact that PSG play in the French league. Other teams around Europe, such as the Big 2 in Spain, as well as the English teams, and even Juventus and the 2 Milans, play in much more competitive leagues. Coming up against quality week in, week out sharpens not just the body, but the mind as well. PSG simply aren't playing at the required level often enough. So when the business end of the Champions League rolls around in the spring, the physical and mental jump in quality seems to be proving too much. Fans would do well to take a step back and take stock of what they're actually asking these guys to go and do. Yes, it's all well and good putting 5 past Clermont at the weekend, but expecting the team to do the same against a Chelsea or even an Ajax is unrealistic. Until the fans and board can manage their expectations better, the disappointment will continue. And what about their defence and system? Spending millions of euros to put together the most terrifying front 3 in Europe is lovely, but all of that is no use if you cannot keep the ball out of the back of the net. As we mentioned earlier, PSG are yet to win the Champions League under QSI. In fact, they've never won it in their history, and in each of the last 10 seasons, they've been dumped out of the competition at various stages, having conceded at least 3 goals in each 2-legged tie, except the 2020 final, which they still lost 1-0 to Bayern. This is a problem. In Europe especially, they simply concede too many goals. Against Bayern recently, in a tie they again lost by 3 goals over 2 legs. PSG started Sergio Ramos, Danilo Pereira and Marquinhos in a 3-at-the-back system. Now, nobody's doubting the quality of those 3, but Ramos especially is past his time. In the first leg, PSG played a 4-4-2, so it's probably fair to say they don't even know what their best system is. Every top team in Europe has an idea of what system they're playing week in, week out, and they all know the majority of their starting 11. This just doesn't seem to be the case at PSG. It probably doesn't help that Kylian Mbappe reportedly has a say in who plays and in which system. Whether there's any truth in those particular rumours is unknown, but the fact that people think it could be a possibility is telling. Could the solution to PSG's problem be a European Super League? When the European Super League was suggested back in the spring of 2021, many supporters across Europe, as well as rival clubs who had not been included in proposals, were quick to shut the idea down. And rightly so. I mean, they kind of shot themselves in the foot with their motto of the best clubs, the best players every week. Then including Tottenham. Oddly, PSG weren't a part of the initial plans to create a breakaway league, but any future plans would almost certainly include them. And it could be their best opportunity to win a big European trophy. Playing in an inter-European league every week would level the playing field for PSG, both financially and in terms of attracting players to the club. Although they have managed to attract some of the biggest names in world football in the past decade, that is almost certainly down to the money on offer. The chance to play in and win a European Super League could tempt other players who aren't simply motivated by money. This could solve the ego problem. It would also allow PSG to play against true quality week after week, something which isn't necessarily happening right now. Whilst PSG don't seem too well equipped to win the Champions League right now, it's not completely beyond the realms of possibility for them to win it in the coming season. But similar to Manchester City and their billionaire owners, PSG winning it would almost certainly be another nail in the coffin for the football traditionalists. As always, thanks for joining us today, and remember to tune in again next time for some more interesting takes from around the world of football. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel. Bye guys!